All right, welcome to installment number 2 of graphics. We're now going to try to add some buttons and some components. So all we did was get a piece of paper on the screen last time. It was red because we did this. I've added some comments of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of the 5 steps that we did up there. But really, this was just a basic way. We now want to add components to the piece of paper. So it's really good for you to think about that this is the piece of paper. And then we set the color of the piece of paper. Well, now I want to add what are called components to the piece of paper. And there are a lot of different types of components in Java. We're going to start out by just trying to add a button. And then we click on the button and it does something. So we've seen buttons in all sorts of GUIs before. So let's see if we can add a button. So we're going to start out with a JButton. And we'll just call it button 1. And so now, just because I started with JButton right here, you know that there must be a JButton class in the API. So we're creating an object of the JButton class, and we don't know what the constructors look like, so we're going to run to the API. So we quickly run to the API, we do a search for JButton, we click on JButton, it opens up JButton over here. We see it's in the swing package, or Java x.swing package, which we already imported, so we're good. We'll check out the constructors. We got one here that with no text or icon. We got one here with an action. I don't know what that is. Oh, we got one here with an icon. That sounds pretty cool. We'll get to that later, but I just want a simple button that has a text on it that says click me or something like that. This looks like the constructor that I want to use. So there's one that it just accepts a string. It says it creates a button with text. I feel good about that one. I'm going to give that one a whirl over here. So right here, when I go to create the object, I'm going to pass a string and I'll pass click me, exclamation point. I'll make it very dramatic. Now, it is very important that you understand that that does not add the button to the screen. All that did was create the button. So think of it as creating the button over on the side, kind of like Vacation Bible School. It's just sitting over there, and you just created a Moses, but you haven't put him on the felt board yet. So we got to get him on the felt board. So the next step we're going to do is add that button to, then it's like, am I adding it to the frame and am I adding it to the panel? You're adding it to the panel. You want to put it on the piece of paper, and then once we have the paper all built, then we'll put the paper on the frame, which is really what this line of code is doing. This is putting the piece of paper on the frame. This is creating the piece of paper. This is creating the component. Now we're going to add that component to the piece of paper. So we're going to put the name of our piece of paper, which is my panel, and we're going to try to add it. Now we could go look at the API again, but there is an add method that allows you to add any type of component. Well, a JButton is at least a component, so we can add that JButton that we just created, and the object that we just created was button 1. So this is taking the piece of paper and adding the button to it. I'm so excited, I just can't hide it. I'm about to lose control, and I think I like it, so I'm going to run it, and I'm going to see what this looks like. Oh my goodness, look at there, we have a button. I can click it and click it and click it. It does absolutely nothing because we didn't have any listeners for it yet. But we got a button on the screen. It's pretty exciting. It gives it a nice gray background. It's got all sorts of things. We must be able to change the size of it. We must be able to change the color of it. We must be able to change the color of the text. There must be millions of things that we can do with this JButton, and we'll just research that in the API on your own time. So you can play with it, and it would be, button 1 dot, and you go look at the API to see if you can find a method that'll do what you want to do to that button. Listeners are a whole different thing. It'll take us a long time to get to listeners. All right, now why did it put it here? We just said add it. The default layout of a piece of paper or any container is the flow layout. There are many different types of layouts in Java. The flow layout always centers an item when you add it and puts it at the top. Now, eventually it'll run out of room. And once it runs out of room, it'll go to the next line and so forth. So just to show that, we're going to add another button as well. So I'm going to do this exact same code just to save me time. I'm going to copy it and I'm going to paste it in here and do it again. But this time I'll call it button 2 and I won't call it click me. I'll say, I don't know, hello in here, and we'll add button 2. So this is a quick way just to check. What if I create 2 buttons and add both buttons? What will that do? Will that replace the previous one? It's pretty exciting. Drama. It says no syntax errors. Pretty exciting. Drum roll, please. Oh, we got 2 buttons. And it moved it over. So it's trying to center things. So it just moved it over. Notice the button size is all based on the text size as well, but we can change all of that. We can make the button bigger, smaller. Just so many methods that you can play with in the API, but we're just and it gives us a little space in between these. This is the flow layout. The flow layout is doing this. If we added another button, actually, watch us resize the screen and watch what happens everything here. It will dynamically move things in center. So the flow layout is fantastic. Look, it's making sure it stays there. Even if I make it so small that it doesn't fit, it'll automatically move the next one to the next line. I think that's pretty cool. That's the flow layout. It's the default layout of every container in Java. But it's not always great. Maybe I want click me to be over here, and maybe I want hello to be over here. So sometimes it's not a great layout. There are many different types of layouts in Java that we can play with. We'll look at that in the next video, but this is currently using the flow layout. Let's add a different type of component. How about a JButton? Or sorry, we just did JButton. How about a JText field? We could go look at the API at all the different types of components that you can add. I'm just doing a couple quick ones. JText field, we'll call it field1 equals new JText field. And I'm going to run to the API again. I actually do not know what this one is, so this is actually real of me just kind of doing, oops, JText area. Ooh, look at, there's a JText area, there's a JText component, there's a JText field, a JText pane, there's JToolbars, there's JSplit bars, JRadio button. That looks pretty cool right there. JScroll bar. Oh, that'd be awesome to learn how to, a JSlider. What's a JSpinner? These are all types of components that we can add. Oh, that's awesome. All the J stuff is an extension to the original Java. I don't know. It's pretty cool. So you can research all these things, but right now we're working on JText field, I said. So we're going to check out JText field. We're going to go to the constructor to check it out. One that allows you to put text in the text field. I like this one because I really just want a blank text field for somebody to be able to type something in. And this is int, that is the columns, is how big the text field is. I think I'm going to use that one. So I'm going to try that constructor right there. Run back over here. So I'm going to type in, I don't know, 50 sounds like a good number. And we'll see what that looks like. Remember, that just created it over on the side. We have to add it to the panel or to the piece of paper. So mypanel.add, and we'll just say field1. And we'll throw that sucker in there, and hopefully this compiles and it works great. This is pretty, I don't know, this is pretty exciting. Holy cow, we added a new text field. Now I made it so big it looks like it's, oh boy, how many columns there? Maybe I made it too big that it, oh, there it is. That's 50. That's pretty big right there. It's 50 columns right there. So notice it was too big when it was this size. So maybe I don't want to make it that big. I'm like, all right, maybe I'll make it just 10. And I can play with these numbers if I want. So I'm just going to make it a size 10 instead. Compile it here. Go back and run it. And that's a little bit better of a text field. And maybe I have a prompt. Ooh, that's a JLabel. If you ever just want text, so this is a button, this is a JText field. Let's do one more type of component. Let's add a label as well. So we'll say JLabel. We'll call this label-y. I don't know. It's just kind of fun to name things, whatever. Maybe pony, dog, chicken. New JLabel. I go to the API. I would see that there's a JLabel constructor that accepts text, and I just pass whatever I want. And I'll pass does this work, and I'll add that to the panel. So my panel dot add labely. So I create the object and then I add it to the piece of paper. This is a quick way just to make some text show up on a panel. So hopefully we'll see just some text here. It won't be a button, it'll just be text. I can change the size of that text, color of that text, all those things using methods from the API. So going to the API and trying to find one. Let's just see if we can change the color of it right now. Let's just experiment with this. So we're going to go to JLabel. So we're going to the API and we're like, I don't know how to do this. I have no idea how to do this. I'm going to go to the methods. I'm looking for something to allow me to set the color of it. So I don't see anything in there that says set color. So maybe I'll do a search. So I'll say, all right, set color. How about set text color? Set text, that's a string. Set color. Set component Euler, no. Font, set font. Set focus, set font, set foreground, set font, set font, set font. All right, let's go look at set font and see what we get in there. It's probably just going to give us the, as I said, oh, well, let's all do this together. Ooh, foreground color. Sets the foreground color of this component. I have no idea if that's going to work, but we're going to give it a try. Set foreground color, and you pass a color. So an object of the color class. So I'm trying to read the API set foreground, set foreground. So I'm going to put the name of my JLabel. Oops. And I got to do this before I add it to the screen. I don't want to set the color before I add it. So my labely, got set for, and I'm like, oh, I can't remember control space. We'll try to do some autocomplete for you. Oh, there it is. There's the set foreground, and I'll pass a color. Now up here, let's just show you another way. We created an object of the color class to create a color. There are also variables in the color class that allow you to make a color as well. So we'll do that while we're here. In the API, we'll run to the color class right now. So we'll go to color. And I don't know why I can never get to the top one. I want to get all the way up here to the top. There should be a color class. They won't let me get to the color class quickly. I was doing it alphabetical. Oh, there it is. Here's the color class. Instead of going to constructors or methods, there are also fields in these classes. If I go to the fields, these are variables, and notice they're all static, which means we can access them by using the class name, and I'll tell you they're public, which is, seems to break the rules of the API, but they have some colors already set up for us. Like maybe you want a cyan color or a green or a light gray or a magenta or whatever. So instead of having to figure out the RGB value, we can just pass them in. So we're going to pass in, I don't know, yellow sounds good. So there are two of them. One of them's a constant, one of them's not. I'm going to use this yellow one with a constant. So in Java, where it said you got to pass me a color, we could create an object of the color class, or we could do this, color.yellow, and we are using a static constant variable or field of the Java class that creates an object of the color class for us. So this is Java's way of giving you a quick way to use a color. All right, let's see if that did set the foreground of the J label. We don't know. I have no idea. First time ever trying it. Give it a whirl. Oh my goodness, look at that. It worked. We got it to turn yellow by using that. We just researched the API. That's what I want you to be able to do. I want you to be able, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Then you try to figure it out another way. Maybe go to, just do a search for it in Java of how to do it, or search for it in your web browser just to find out, how does this work? How does this work? How does this work? I'm trying to teach you basics on how to research the API and then let you go fishing on your own. So good luck with that one. That was just a quick way to add components. We eventually have to add listeners to all these things. Like when we click, what do we want to do? When we type something in here and we type something in the text box, we want to be able to get what's in the text box and do something with it. And labels have no interaction with them, but everything else does. So that's video number 2 on graphics.